whatever shortcomings your parents have, however they're fucking you up because they're not paying attention correctly, you're not going to blame them for, which you just did. You didn't do it again. Like, you're going to blame yourself, right? So you think, like, I must be fucked up because they're my parents. They're perfect. I must be the fucked up one. So in the gap between whatever their detachment is or however they're emotionally not treating you correctly, you install a parent of your own in your own head that calls you an asshole your entire life.
Right. Yes, that's what my therapist has been telling me for quite a while. Yeah, very similarly. And I do that a lot where I'll go, yeah, but this, and he's like, that, you're doing it again. And I'm like, shit. And also my mother's also a very, very anxious person, OCD, and so that's a lot of learned.
So you got the detached guy and the panic guy.
Yes, exactly.
The detached father, and they're like, oh, where are you going? Don't, oh my God, that.
Yeah, a lot of, not so bad as that, but a lot of definite anxiety. And I think now, and I've talked to my family about this now with young kids in the family, there's not a lot of separation between talking really serious matters about car wrecks and disease and people breaking into the house and hearing that as a kid being like, someone's going to break in our house or whatever. So that's a lifelong fear and all those kind of things.
Oh, so she was just freaked out about everything. And that's sort of antithetical to nurturing panic.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of panic, anxiety, and certainly longing for that attention, love, and feeling of being protected. That's what my therapist always says: is you feel unprotected in the world, which I do, or have.
I wish I had the longing for love more. Like, I think my parents were so manipulative that's how I sort of processed love. So, like, now, like, the idea of love, it's like, you're fucking with me. There's not. It's like with an audience, a girlfriend, doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't buy it. You don't really like me.
Right, yeah. That's
my cross to bear. I never believe the love.
Yeah, I think I deal with that a little bit, too. My therapist has to go, well, your wife married you. She did commit to being with you for life. And you're like, yeah, but I don't know.
She's running a con of some kind. I mean,
Yeah, something's up. But that's a lot of the feeling for sure.
So did comedy, I often wondered that, like, because I was compelled early too, like to, when I was 11 or 12, and I certainly didn't know how to pursue it as a job. And, even when I was in college, it still didn't make sense to me. I remember approaching Paul Reiser when I went to see a comedy show at the stand-up or at the comic strip when I think I was in college. And I was like, I want to do comedy. How do you do it? And he's like, well, you just got to do it. And I'm like, how the fuck does that mean? There was no, but by the time you got in, there was a path. There was a whole community of people trying to do it that you could go find fairly easily in Boston.
Yeah, it was weird. So I feel like now the way people talk was sort of, I started in 2000, and it sounds like that was sort of like a dip spot, because obviously it's been sort of booming in the last few years, and then
the dip, like depending on what city you're in, the dip has been going on since the late 80s. I was in Boston in 88, so that's when I started working doing stand-up. But the thing was, in Boston, it didn't matter that there was a dip because you were doing one-nighters. So there was 3 companies that booked a million one-nighters all over. And there was Nick's in town. So it wasn't like it was a comedy boom, but you could go to Brockton and fucking play a hotel lobby. You know what I mean? So that was the way it was then.
Yeah. So, I started in 2000, and I similarly didn't know where to go, really. And then I was walking, like, I had just graduated high school and had no plans to go to college or anything like that.
And you had never done it before?
Never done it, and I should say one time I opened for my friend's band because I knew I wanted to be a comedian, and it was a little different. I went up, and this is like embarrassing but hilarious. I had a bag of tricks. I was a prop act,
right?
And I had a raw hamburger bun, and I asked a guy in the crowd, "What's your name?" And he said, "Whatever, Steve." And I said, "Nice to meet you." And I threw a raw burger patty at him.
Yeah.
Not at him, but like to his feet,
Wow.
And then I had a
How'd
green
that
lei.
go over?
Didn't hit, but I had some high school buddies there that thought it was funny because it was ridiculous.
Didn't hit. Maybe did you, because you would have had to hold the meat up and then throw it, right?
Yeah,
but you probably didn't do that. You probably just panicked.
It's funny. It's funny you said that because I do remember now. After the show, people saying like, "We didn't know what that was."
Yeah, right. Yeah,
they were just like, "What was
what
that?"
happened? You got a big plan in your head, and then you rush through it, and it doesn't land, and it's a weird moment, right? And
it's just completely weird. And then I ripped off George Carlin had that old poem about his hair.
Yeah,
and I wrote one about the word "fuck." It was like, "Fuck" is a word often heard, often slurred. It was like this, Carlin ripoff, and it was. I probably did like 2.5 minutes or something, and then brought out my friend's band.
Yeah, probably too fast, and just sort of like, but it's weird. That's what we got to do. There's no way to be good at it at the beginning. It's just terrifying and stupid, and you just want to get through that 3 minutes, and like, fuck, man, if I really put my mind back there, it was just nothing but panic. And you'd spend the entire day or week just like, I got to do 3 minutes on Saturday, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense, but you had to do it. It was strange. And I was a kid. I was like 18. I just graduated high school a few weeks ago. So they just set up the commuter rail, which is like the train directly from Whitman to Boston. So I was like walking around Boston just aimlessly, and I happened to walk by over by Fenway. There was like a Howard Johnson's, and it said open mic Wednesday. It was like a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And I called in like the yellow pages, and they were like, it was like an Asian guy. I won't do the voice to spare everybody, but he was like, come in Wednesday. I could barely understand him, and I was like, great. And I thought, like, all right, I got a gig. This is going to be better. This is like an adult. This is a real comedy.
Yeah.
And it was called Chops Lounge, and that's where I actually started, like October 2000.
Chops Lounge.
Chops Lounge.
By
and
Fenway.
It was like, yeah, right next to Fenway.
At the Howard Johnson's next to Fenway.
Yes.
I can't picture that. Is that an old Howard Johnson's?
Well, now it's gone. Now it's like a really hipster like bar. That whole neighborhood, I don't know when the last time you were in the Fenway area, but it's completely changed in like the last 3 years. It's crazy.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's like high-rise buildings and like really cool burger joints and all kinds of bars and rooftops. It's like it looks unrecognizable. And I've only been gone for, I guess I've been gone 13 years now. But.
So this was the bar at Howard Johnson's near Fenway, and who was hosting that fucking nightmare?
A guy named Larry Lee Lewis.
I don't know him.
He probably came around after you, but he did like old vaudevillian jokes and played the piano, like a boogie-woogie piano. He was a combination of, I guess, Jerry Lewis and the old vaudeville jokes, and he would do a lot of like,
Isn't he an old guy?
He was. He was old to me. Now looking back, he was like 52 because he did a joke. He'd say, "I'm a 52-year-old pothead," but to me, I was 18. He was like an antique. I thought he was an old man.
Larry Lewis, huh? It sounds like he might have been around when I was there.
I think he was new. I think he had just kind of started late in life. But it was like a true open mic. Whoever showed up went on, and there was some good comics there. Dan Mintz, you probably know.
Yep.
He was always there, and some other people.
That's where he started? That's where Dan started?
I believe so. He was around. I think he was a Harvard guy, so he was always there. And then Dan Levy's another L.A. guy that was always there. Yeah,
I know Dan Levy. The other Dan Levy, right?
Yes.
Eugene Levy's kid and Dan Levy, who's a TV writer.
Right.
Yeah, Dan. I like Dan. I like both of them, but I know Dan. Sure.
So he would be there, and then there was a lot of like just crazy people, like actual crazy people that would go up, and I was like a kid with jokes who spent my day trying to write jokes, and then there was some old psychos, and then there was some Boston veterans would show up. Teddy Bergeron would show up.
Teddy, hello, Teddy. Yeah.
And, he had a boombox. He would record his set with like a boombox with a tape deck on it. And,
that's my son. He'll drop it. Yeah. Teddy had some of the best fucking jokes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, what a sad old fucker. But I'll tell you, man, did you listen to that live one I did with him? Like, it was kind of astounding because, Teddy's story, and I'm sure you've heard some version of it, is just horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's astounding that he's alive. And he's a very sort of like it's a sad story. But what was really interesting is I tracked him down to do a live WTF. And he wasn't easy to find. He doesn't have a phone. I had to call somebody that knew him or a relative. I don't remember how I got him, right? And I hadn't seen him forever. And he's in the dressing room for WTF, and he was in sweats. And he's like, I'm working on a new thing about about Mother Teresa and the Pope, and maybe I'll try that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm already sucked into this nightmare codependent Teddy world in seconds. And I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And we get out there on stage, though, dude. And, people don't know him anymore, really,
Right.
And a lot of my audience wouldn't know him at all. And he's trying his new stuff, and I see him, sweating it out. And I know there's no way he could have tested it or anything. And then he's got I knew he had all those great jokes about, his father, So I go so when you grew up, your father, what was he like? He said, my father. And he just went into those bits, dude, and they killed. And it was like almost moving, these bits that have been around for decades, and they were so well honed and so well written and so personal and perfect. And he just started doing them, and they just were it was like no one had ever heard them before. It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. I've tried hard to find old footage of him. I think there's a set of him on the old Letterman show that looks real weird. It's not great, whatever quality. But
right.
Yeah, when he would get it together and do, I'm sure the same bits that he did in 1982 that I saw in 2001.
Like there's no Santa Claus and she's on a wire.
Exactly. Yeah, that bit was magical. I mean, it was great. Now, he had one of my favorite jokes ever was the, hockey players are tough. You know that joke? Hockey players are tough. They get, hit in the face with the puck. They'll get 15 stitches, come out and play the third period. Baseball players, those guys aren't tough. And he goes, you always watch the game and they go, here's Ozzie Taylor steps to the plate. He missed the first half of the season. He was frightened by a small child last Halloween.
Yeah, it's funny.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So they would come. Who were some of the other veterans that would drop by?
That was Tony V, maybe occasionally, but most of those guys didn't touch that place because this was low level open mic. But then I started doing Dick Doherty's Comedy Vault on Sunday nights. Then you'd see Tony V and all those guys. Kevin Knox was a big part of the scene then. And then he ran the Monday at the Comedy Connection, and that was the big, to me, there was a time in my career where Monday night, if you could get to the Comedy Connection, which was their new talent night, that was the Tonight Show at that point in my career, and Kevin Knox hosted it.
Oh, so Knoxy, so you were there before he died and before Loletta got sick. Those guys started with me, or they were kind of around my generation. I remember when Noxie started and those guys, because I was in Boston, I guess I was there in 88, and I was, I moved to New York in 89, but I had to go up there every weekend to work. So I was in Boston 89 through 91, 92, working all those one-nighters and Knicks and everything else. So all those guys were around that generation,
Yeah, it was great to be around those guys because, I didn't know any of those guys, and I was one of the people that thought that the comedians were, Bill Cosby and George Carlin and Rosie O'Donnell.
That's a good point about Boston, where you get this whole working class bunch that, you wouldn't know, and you still wouldn't know them. I started with Joe Yannetti. I did open mics when I was in college with Yannetti and who else? Kevin or Brian Kiley. And the guys who were doing open mics, Fred, do you remember Simply Fred? Was he around when you were? He was probably
no.
He just went by the name Fred. It was there were some other ones that I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, I was a big Comedy Connection guy and doing all those one-nighters you talked about. That was VFWs and firehouses and KFCs or KFC, I should say. That was my comedy, and I'm still nostalgic about those gigs. Those are some of my best sets I've ever had. Were in firehouses and VFWs.
Well, it's interesting that you when you pay your dues like that, you really are coming in cold. There's no I mean, it's like guerrilla comedy. Like, they're only having comedy night there once a week or once a month or whatever the fuck it is. It's